Welcome, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Hello to everyone in the world, wherever you are watching from, whatever time zone you're in, or if you're watching the replay. Hello and welcome. I am 𝗿𝗵𝗃𝗃, and this is Art School Live, normally hosted by our CEO, Eric Rhodes. However, he is hosting Acrylic Live this week. It is our virtual online event for acrylic artists. So I get the pleasure of hosting Art School Live all week, and I'm super excited. I love getting to host this show and getting to hang out with artists for an hour and watch them paint and ask questions and learn. And it's just a lot of fun. So I'm glad you're here joining us today. And with us, we have artist Anne Strutz. And if you guys were here, regular watchers would know this. She was here last year and showed us a very unique technique that she used for using water-mixable oils in her underpainting for pastels. So I'm really excited to see what she's going to be sharing with us today. So let's bring in Anne. Hi, Anne. How are you?
I am good. I'm glad you mentioned the water mixable oil because I'm going to do that again today a little bit, but I'll do the technique a little different. And we're going to do flowers, contemporary flowers. I'm going to and how to abstract them from your photograph, kind of to depart from copying a photograph to create an expressive, more contemporary floral pastel. And yeah, so that's what today's going to be all about.
I love it. I get a little too mechanical and realist when I try to paint. So I'm excited to learn this technique. And just a heads up for everyone, there is a wildfire near Anne. So if things get a little crazy, she might have to leave. So let's go ahead and get this show started so we can get going.
It's Art School Live with Eric Rhodes.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. 𝗿𝗵𝗃𝗃 here. Obviously not Eric Rhodes. He is hosting not Art School Live. He is hosting Acrylic Live this week, our virtual event for acrylic painters. So I will be hosting all this week. And with us today is Anne Strutz, pastel artist. And she's going to be showing us her unique method on how to abstract your kind of reference photos, I guess you could say, to create some contemporary floral paintings. And I'm really excited about this because I would love to be more impressionist and expressionist and do all these kinds of fun things. And so I am really excited to learn this. So let's let Anne take it away.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Are we good? Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So today I'm going to show kind of a 3-step process of layering a alcohol and pastel underpainting wash, and then water mixable oil with a brayer and a patterned brayer to create some texture and a background, and then we put pastel on top. So it's a 3-step process, and I have layered 3 stages of paper here so that you can see how I do each stage as it goes. I'm going to create an underpainting first on this 𝗬𝗏 400 paper with pastel and rubbing alcohol and a big brush. Then I will remove this so it can dry. I prepped one in advance so that I would be working on a dry surface. Sure. So this is just to show you the technique. And I'm going to be using some very large 𝗖𝗿𝗃𝗃𝗃 pastels, and it's just putting a light layer of color.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Yeah, these are great. And then I'm kind of just playing. A lot of times I'm thinking about color theory. I've been looking at the works of Matisse and Derain lately, their floral works, and how they, if you're looking at a lot of historic artwork and you're wanting to be looser and more expressive, you notice that, they really do not, they're not trying to do photorealism. They are abstracting from what they see and creating the essence of the image that they want to create. They're rendering an interpretation. And I find I teach quite a bit, and people get really caught up in trying to get every little detail that they're seeing.
That is the problem too.
Yeah, and you need to just let yourself go. So, and sometimes taking a look at the masters and different eras in painting, if you're not interested, I mean that I love hyperrealism as well. It's just not what I do, so it's not saying that that's a bad or we don't like that. But for this purpose, if you're looking at some other artists' work, Klimt, uh, Redon, Matisse, they're getting the essence of what they're seeing, and they're allowing themselves to respond to what's on the paper in front of them, what's
Hmm.
happening in front of them. So what I'm doing here is I'm starting from light to dark because I don't want the colors to completely mix. However, as I work my way down, I will then kind of let them merge together.
What size paper is this? Is this 11 by
This
17?
is 𝗬𝗏 400 sandpaper.
But what size is it?
Oh, what size? This is yeah, this is 11 by 17.
Okay, cool.
And I tend to work pretty large when I'm working with a Brayer, which is a little roller, which you'll see
Right.
later. This is the Brayer. And it's hard to work real small with that. That's another, I'll talk about this as I progress. That's another great thing about starting with a tool, an unconventional tool that will inhibit you from getting super realistic. You
Hmm.
can only draw so much. I'm going to take this. It's just a towel, and it kind of, I like how it blends the color a little bit. And I'm just creating a nice backdrop for my painting. So when there are negative spaces or empty spaces, this is wet. You can see where that's wet.
Hmm.
I could leave that if I wanted. I wanted to get a little more pigment on there. My alcohol that I'm dipping, I don't know if you can see here, I'm always rubbing and letting it. So now I'm going to go over that yellow. This is tainted purple. For the
Hmm.
purposes of what I'm doing, I try to get as much of the pigment out, but I don't really care. This is
Yeah, it adds some
it's
color harmony when it
experimenting.
mixes a little bit.
Hmm?
It adds a little bit of color harmony.
Yes, it is. A lot of my background is in textile design, and it was interesting color mixing. It was way before computers. Color mixing was always you always put a little bit of each color when I was mixing my colors in the paint. Because even if you could, it didn't alter it that much. It does create a harmony
Hmm.
with the paints. So basically, that's how I would create an underpainting. Sometimes it's really fun just to take a day. You might take an hour or two and just create um, these washes of color. You have them ready for when you want to do a painting, and they're all dry, and you can play with your color theory. You can do something that is contrasting. You can do something. Let me grab my color wheel. So my scheme was kind of a complementary. It had the blue, it had the purple and the yellow, which is a complement on your wheel, so they kind of make each other pop.
Hmm.
This is my final one that I'm going to do my painting on. And my little layering technique here took my paper right off. So I'm going to grab that. I try to be as organized as possible. This is just, so you can actually work in these stages in your studio. So make an underpainting, some alcohol washes, and then do some sketching. This is just cheap, inexpensive drawing paper. It's like kids grade. So I have a lot of it, or you could work on newsprint if you want to go better. This worked out really well because it's the exact same size as my painting. So if I do I will do these Brayer sketches in advance so that, warm-ups, I call them, so that when I go on to my final paper, I have a general idea of what it is I'm going to put onto that nice, little bit more expensive UArt gritty paper that holds a pastel so well. I'll have worked through some problems on sketch paper. And so now, first process was the underpainting, alcohol underwash with pastel. The next will be taking a Brayer and water-mixable oil paint. I'm using Payne's Gray for these sketches. And I use water-mixable oil because it washes off easily. You can use like a wet wipe, or Home Depot has industrial wipes, or even just a paper towel to clean them up, clean up your brayer. And I will take, do you have the reference up? We have our photo reference. It's just a bouquet of flowers. That is not a particularly excellent photograph. When I try to put a lot of obstacles in front of me to prevent me from trying to copy something. I have a friend who, the more complicated the drawing is, the more she enjoys the process. For me, I like to eliminate the complications. So in some ways, when I put something very busy in front of me, it seems counterintuitive, but it forces me to see just the bigger shapes and simplify. And then using the Brayer, I will then just draw with it. And sometimes I'll spend, an hour, and these are pretty quick. And the more you do it, the better you get at it, the better a handle you have on your being able to manage what you're going to do and the types of marks that you make. Right now, you can see I'm just using it flat and getting big shapes. I might indicate where flowers are in this still life. Just the bigger shapes, trying to place them. And if they're not placed perfect, it's okay. You're creating your rendition of what you see. So this is a great way to allow you to forgive yourself. I might not put all of the flowers in. I might put extra flowers in. And that might happen as this develops. So there I mainly used by tapping. I mean, you can create all kinds of patterns. Using the edge, I get stripes. Pressing down on one side, the edge, and letting it hit, I can get these cool effects. So it's something that you really can really have a lot of fun with, because that's what we're doing, right? We're learning, we want to get better, but we also want to make sure we're having some fun when we're behind the easel. Letting go of any kind of fear. So as you see, when there's a lot of ink, and this is just a test paper for me to show you some things on how this all works. But when there's a lot of, I always say ink, when there's a lot of paint on the Brayer, I can get these straight blocks of color. If the paint is not put on the Brayer evenly, hold on, you can get blobs, which are kind of cool.
Yeah.
You know, it can, you can also make patterns. I'm going to remove, let's see if I have too much ink on here, but I'm going to remove some of the paint. This is just a knitting needle. And you can create, let's see what happens when I do this. Different textures. Let's see if I did not go all the way around. So you'll see that where there's.
Did you put that texture in before you put paint on, or did you roll it in paint after?
After. I put the texture, I put the paint on the roller, and then I made the marks. So also so you can see, because I didn't send a photographic image, but this is what I'm rolling. I have a glass plate, and I have the paint on the glass plate, just like you would use for oil painting.
Mm-hmm.
And you roll the paint, you spread the paint out onto the palette. You can also, if you want, take something like the ever famous single-edged razor blade, and I am going to this is just to show you, and mainly like I can't, you know, if you take a look at Matisse, he has a lot of pattern work in some of his paintings, particularly from the Fauvist time period. And I have a background in textile, so I was trying to figure out, well, how can I incorporate? I love pattern, and how am I can I incorporate that into what I'm doing? And this was like a really fun way of doing it. So now I'm just rolling it. Let's see if this works, because I have a lot of, maybe it didn't get quite as much texture, but you can play with doing all kinds of mark maker, either by removing the paint from the palette or putting paint. I'm going to get a clean brayer. I'm going to use a different color, and I'm going to see if I can show you this better. Now, you can spend hours creating all different patterns. You can also get into mono print, which I am not going to do right now. But you can create a mono print too, like Degas. Okay, so I just created so you can see there's different ways. And then also you don't have to just use black. You can use all colors. When you use the different colors, each paint color has a different quality to it. Some are kind of wetter or more slippery than others. So I would, you try them out. That's another reason to try out things on your scrap paper before you go on to good paper, just to get a sense of what's going to happen. You're never going to be able to recreate exactly what you do here onto your final work. There's always going to be elements of surprise. So then I might take from here on this, I might take a black pastel and do a contour drawing, almost like a blind drawing. When you go to, if you take any life drawing classes, gesture, blind drawings, contour drawings are exercises that you use with a live model for painting or a still life. You can do that with a photograph too. You can just where you're spending more time looking at the photo reference image than you are at your paper, and you get a nice, the more you do this, the better you get at it. This is how I learned how to draw. I never learned with a grid. It's really, if you're using it to learn to draw, it's all about the relationship of space, the negative spaces, how far something is from something else in your painting. But for our purposes, I'm just going around. I'm going over where the body of these flowers that I put are. I never lift my pastel up. I'm kind of doing an outline. Filling in where the dark is. Kind of walking my way, and my eye is leading me through the painting. And they're really fun, and you really have to concentrate while you're doing this. You know, it actually, I love it because it forces me to forget everything else that's going on, like the wildfire that is happening in my backyard. And then I might decide, if you look at the reference photos, there's lots of greenery in them. I can decide to put that in. I can put it in later. This also is a 𝗖𝗿𝗲𝗁 black. Oh, I'm not supposed to say it. This is a black pastel in a kind of a narrower stick form. So sometimes I like to use, you know, different shaped pastels for different reasons. So that might be one sketch. Now, if you want to, a lot of times I've found the more you do these, you'll start to really enjoy what's happening on your sketch. You can, if you do them on a like a 𝗣𝗶𝗵𝗃 printmaking paper, you can go onto a better paper and do your sketches on the better paper if you're okay with that. I always like to give options, because depending on how much you want to spend on all your supplies, but they make beautiful paintings also. So I have a lot of these that I moved on to using Bristol. Bristol is not, you could gesso the paper so that it would be okay to have the oil paint on and it would last longer. But for my purposes, I would not try to sell something like that without stating it. But I'm okay with just using a nice heavy Bristol paper, and then keeping them, because I might want to work this further, and you might find you want to stop right there. I'm going to do one more of these.
We've got about 30 minutes left.
30? Okay, yeah, we're good. Okay, so I'm going to do one more of these, and this time I'm going to use, I found these, this is a tool used for making impressions in clay. So these are really neat, because rather than have to create a pattern, which you could carve your own if you wanted to, make your own stamps, I rolled it in my paper. And I'm setting a backdrop. It's kind of like cheating, you know, I don't have to draw all the texture. Now, this might inspire me to create a texture and paint it all, you know, recreate this in a painting. But I find it really fun to be able to go on and use these textures and save the time, really. I get busy. I have a lot of things going, and sometimes this whole process of painting these flowers started for me as a warm-up, or when I didn't have time at home to set aside, you know, 1 or 2 hours to paint. That's another thing I love about pastel is you can just have them out and pick them up in a little corner, leave them, pick them up as you need them, and, you know, spend a half hour drawing or sketching or painting. And so these flowers kind of became a fun exercise for me, that I could just have the roller and brayer and feel like I get these little creative paintings through it. And then they really were, they kind of grew into something more than that. People really enjoy both the process for teaching. I'll use this, and then also for selling. People like the fresh approach. So now I used my gray and the purple. Sometimes I'll just use black, but something about Payne's gray I really love. It's a little softer.
Yeah.
So this one I'm kind of trying to experiment with fidgeting a little bit more with the brayer. A little looser, a little quicker, a few more lines. I add some here to see if I like that. Do I want it dark back here? If I just have a light, not a lot of paint on the brayer, I can keep that texture. I'm not even looking at my photo at this point. I'm responding to what's happening in front of me. So basically, that's the warm-up. I'm seeing, okay, I've done 2 completely different things. One has some line with pastel in it, different patterns and textures. I covered the background, so there's a color here. Do I like this solid color? Do I like more texture happening on the whole piece? Sometimes you want a place for your eye to rest. So basically, that's my warm-up and my study before I go on to paper. And now I'm going to go on to the paper. Now you can really play with color theory when you're doing this and placing your painting on top of the underpainting. I decided to go with kind of an analogous palette for the underpainting using this periwinkle. This one is a lavender water-mixable oil paint. Sometimes I'll mix my own colors. And I am going to spread the paint out on my glass, like I showed you the glass before. And then I roll my pattern. I've decided I really like the pattern. And I'm going to carefully, avoiding the middle. And you can see there's a lot less contrast, right, than if I were to do here.
Yeah.
Having it on the color background. You could decide to just work on a piece of colored one color paper. But I really find, and then if I put this up here, I'm going to see it a lot more on the top. Than I am on the bottom, because you have kind of a little bit more of a complementary-ish contrast. Also, the values are different. So this is a similar value, and this is a dark against the light. And then I will I put my razor blade in a little handle. So there are, when you get globs of paint, Sorry for the scratching noise. I might want to remove some of that paint, especially if I'm going to go right on and paint right after. Don't really want blobs of paint. Another reason I use water-mixable oil paint is when you use regular oil, the oil tends to, it can bleed and you get like a little ring around
Oh, yeah.
the colors. So I like to avoid that. I now have some extra paint on my razor and I might want to maybe just create some marks with that. Whoops, scratching some of the pastel off there. I always remove, in case I'm going to pull this out to make mark making with, I always clean the paint off of it. So now I just need to lay in my vase, and I have to make a decision if I'm going to lay this in the periwinkle or the Payne's Gray. So I have this palette with all this paint. I think I'm going to just blend the two of them together.
That's what I was just thinking.
Yeah, and it's really tempting. I mean, you just, and look at that, and so much harmony.
Yeah.
Between them. And I'm just going to, I'm not following the exact shape of this vase. The photo reference is kind of looking down on it a little bit. I kind of want to be a little bit more looking straight on at it. I might get a little line in here to kind of set it so it's not floating. A horizon line in there. And I can just go back and forth. I'm being fearless. No place for fear. I am playing. And I'm stepping back and coming in and thinking, like right now, I'm going to think about, okay, I'm going to look at my photo reference. I did my sketches. I could have them actually taped up as a reference also, because I liked this one. Just going to stick that right there. Whoops, got to move it over. Sorry, people. Okay, there we go. I'm liking how these are laid out, which is pretty similar to what the photo reference is. And now my decision is, am I going to be brave enough to use my brayer to put those flowers in? Or do I want to just use my pastels? And I don't have to, but I think I'm going to be brave today. I'm going to wipe this off a little bit. It's not perfectly clean, but I just wanted to wipe it off because I'm going to do them in the periwinkle. So I wanted to take a little bit of the color off so that it's not as mixed. And let's see what happens if I do that. I'm going to look at this image and see where I place those flowers. And this will kind of give an under painting for the flower. And I'm just indicating where they are. I liked having one few higher here in my, and you might ask, why are you using a photo reference if you're not going to stick to it? Well, I need something, because what can happen, and a lot of times when you painting is about shape, and you get the shapes in, and then it's a dance between using shape and line, value and color, and you can work your flowers or parts of this painting to be, it might start off abstract and you might decide you want to develop a few of the flowers a little bit further and a little bit more realistic.
Mm-hmm.
So you always have choices. And you always can be asking yourself, what if I did this? What if I tried that? And while I do this, I'm just kind of adding all these like little textures and interest into my painting. Ooh, look at how nice that is. It adds a
Yeah,
little.
that's really nice.
Yeah, okay, I'm liking this. So something that is drawing me in is when I created the underpainting, I want it to have light and dark so that if I used similar colors throughout the painting, they would read differently in each section and create, this is more tonal, analogous next to each other on the color wheel. This is more complementary. And just by having that backdrop and putting this on top of it, I've created all of that interesting interaction of color without a lot of work, right? It's not it kind of does some, I don't know if that's the right term, but it does some of the work for you. So now I'm just going to dance around a little here with my razor blade to make sure I don't have any gobs of paint. Maybe I'll try and put a little, get rid of that paint on here and, you know, see what happens. So now I'm ready for my pastel. So I will take all my paint. Are there any
I'm
questions
so
at all?
excited to see how this comes together with the greens and the reds.
Yeah, yep. And I am going to use green and red. So, and I'm going to say I'm not scared. I could make the decision not to, but I'm actually going to try and hold a little truer to the colors that are for the flowers that are in the painting. These are some of the colors I'm using. I might not use all of them, but I wanted to kind of just give you a little bit of a palette that I'm going to be pulling from. These were the underpainting colors. And then I'm going to have some that are analogous, some that are going to contrast more, particularly the yellow, which I probably will not use very much of, but you can see it in the photograph. There is a little bit of yellow in the background. And now, first, I'm going to do that contour drawing that I talked to you about, and I have to decide what color I want to do that in. So I could do it in the red, I could do it in black, I could do it in green, and I think that I am, for the sake of you being able to see what I'm doing, I'm going to do it in black. So this again is just me going in. Now this is pretty wet right here, you'll see, but I can still work with it. I've never really waited for the most part for anything to dry when I'm doing this, because I sometimes if it doesn't stick to me, it makes an interesting line. Getting in there. Not sure I'm going to put that guy there. I'm also looking at but I'm going back and forth a little bit between my drawing, which you could just look at this, or both my drawing and my photo reference. Another thing that's great about pastel is you can fix things. I'm just trying to get some line quality to the work. See another one over here. This is just a pastel contour drawing. And you're going to find as you do this, you're going to be like, oh, I really like the shape of this flower, or this might be one I would build out more than another one. Get in here. I did lift.
See, this looks good just even as this.
Yeah, yeah. I actually started, it's interesting because, you know, I love pastel. It is my medium of choice. However, with some of this Brayer work, I have been using less pastel on them, you know, and just, you know, you decide you can do there's just so many choices of things that you can do. So you can decide, hey, I want to not put as much pastel on top, depending on how it's developing. You know, that's what's kind of fun about freeing yourself. I believe that the more you experiment and try different mediums, one medium can help the other. But to become a master in a particular medium, you have to really, really practice it.
Right.
But I started, this led me to, well, what's really interesting is I have found by using a Brayer, I now use my pastel differently. I will sometimes just use it very much like it is a Brayer, using the sides. And so each medium and each time you expose yourself to something new, you are then, it's going to influence how you work with your medium of choice. Like I definitely handle my pastels differently now than I used to. Did that make sense?
Right.
So I am trying to get some darks in, figuring out where I'm going to put color. I'm thinking shape right now.
Love that.
And I'm just working around the painting. Both responding to what I see in front of me and my reference. Paying attention to, hey, maybe I don't want to cover that background up completely. Here you can see that I have a lot of oil there, so but it gives a cool effect. And now it's just a layering and building process of putting color, laying your colors in.
So I know you like to use water mixable oils. Have you ever tried acrylics?
I have tried acrylics, and to me they're very slippery. They dry very fast on the Brayer. I'm sure you can use an extender if you want it to. I like they're not as tacky as the oil. So I have found I'm not a big fan of acrylic. However, I did have a student, you know, call me up and say, hey, I tried acrylic and I loved it. So I think you have to try it. You can also use ink, like a printmaker ink. It won't dry as fast, but that's also another choice.
Yeah, that's kind of why I was thinking of acrylic, is so that it would dry a little faster, because I have a ton of acrylic paint. I don't have any oil, so.
Yeah, well, and even like if you want to try the oils, just buy black, you know, or Payne's Gray to start. But you can try, and I believe the same thing will happen with the when you're working with the I'm gonna go light touch here. Let some of that purple show through. When you're working with the acrylics, that different colors will have different qualities to them. So when you put them on, it might, you know, each color might work differently. And you might say, oh, well, what just happened? My red is not spreading like my pink does, or my black does. It's not covering as nicely. varying how I'm applying the pastel in different areas. Another thing you can do, and another, when I first started with a brayer, I would, and doing landscape, I would cover most of it up, which was interesting. And then, but you can also take, like here, you can remove it, and that both the underpainting and the oil paint will still be there. So it's like additive and subtractive painting. And then I like to tend to work the whole painting at once, but you can, and then it's just building each little area out, getting as detailed or not as you want to be. Of course, if you want to be more realistic, you're going to pay attention to the lights and the darks in the painting to get the shapes of the petals. Now I might say to myself, okay, well, I've got some color up top, but I don't have a lot happening down below. I'm actually going to put a little of this in here. So I'm really liking this the way it is. You can even go in and just, if you really want to abstract, you could just color in these shapes that you have.
I forgot to give you a warning. We have 10 minutes now.
Okay, okay. Yeah, well, I pretty much can work this through. Now I'm like, okay, maybe I need to get some of these other colors in here, the greens.
Oh yeah, I definitely need to see the greens come to life in this.
Yeah. So I kind of focused on the flowers, dabbing, using the side. This is a new pastel, so it hasn't been broken in for to have nice even edges. So then I might go back in with line again. Reintroducing
That's fun.
line, yes, into the painting. I took it out there. Here, maybe I'll put a little pink on the end. Oh, and another thing is you can always use the colors. If you have the same color in your pastel, you can use that as your eraser if you don't like something, like, you know.
Oh yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm actually going to put a little yellow in here before I get that green. Carrie, I'm really making you wait for the green.
I know.
I'm not even drawing any particular shapes here. It's like, okay, a little yellow here. I'm responding to what I'm seeing, stepping back. I'm not going to do too much here, and because I don't know, there's something I like about
I kind of like it with the blue.
Yeah, yeah. So now let's see, let's do some green. You know why I'm doing it last, because I'm scared. No, no fear.
No fear.
So here I'm just going to kind of, when I see too much information, I get so like, oh my gosh, all those little leaves. I did study botanical art, believe it or not, which you can't tell from this, but very realistic color pencil program, and you know, basically scientific illustration. My hand would cry, and I could have gotten certified, but I had to memorize all those Latin names, and I'm like, that's not for me.
No, thank you.
But anyway, I almost get anxiety when I look at all that, and I'm like, there's no way I'm going to paint that. So I am just, and if you squint, it's really just, you're blocking in the color, and then you're picking out some highlights. And typically when I work in the, and I'm stepping back, going forward, typically when I work in this manner, I'll get to a certain point and then I let them sit for, you know, and I'll walk past it and be like, okay, I'll just put a mark in, right? Or two. So it'll take several days. It's like the initial part of the painting comes together pretty quickly. And then it'll take several days before I get to the point where, oops, let's see if I like that. Get a little green out here. Where to finish it. Bounce that out a little.
I love that green.
Yeah, this is a great green. Okay, so now I want to go into my pot. Everything still needs to be worked. However, I would like to get some color. And what am I going to do down here? First, I'm going to take my, oh, look at what happened here.
Ooh, that's fun.
Yeah, so my underpainting came through. When I looked at, see, that's one of those little surprises that it's like, yay, I love that happened. And sometimes you'll get caught up in kind of like being like, oh, I don't want to touch this part of the painting because I love it so much, but don't do that either. You know, just be careful because sometimes it might not work as a whole, you know, and you might have to let it go. So I am thinking I am going to, I'm going to take a very dark green. I'm looking at my photo reference now. Let me do a little test. Do I like that?
Ooh, that's pretty.
Do I like that? Here. I like this. So this is a very colorful, turning into very, I'm feeling the Fauvist right now, the wild beast of color.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That is gorgeous.
Maybe I'll get a little neutrals in here. And the shadows are not quite dark enough, but let me see what happens if I take that razor blade again. Still get some of the texture.
That is my favorite color right there.
This one, yeah, it's a beautiful color. And really, it's a dance now. We're pretty close.
Oh yeah, we've got like 1 minute, but yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to go buy a Brayer and some oil paint after this demo.
Yeah, it's very, it's addictive. It's fun. If you're, when I teach, I mean, it's a big thing I like to do is get people to loosen up. A lot of people talk about wanting to loosen up, and it's a great way to get you there. Yeah. And looking at inspiration from your masters with color composition, mark making, and a lot of us are drawn to this beautiful paintings, and then we get behind our reference and we're like this, you know,
Yeah.
trying to copy every little leaf. And when you look at some work you're drawn to, that's not what they're doing at all. So, and here's another one. This was just playing around, but here it's not finished yet, but it'll just show you how can you see that? And you can do so much with it. This one I put a pattern in the background, but I decided that was too busy. And I liked that quietness on the side.
Yeah, I am totally in love with this painting.
So good. Well, thank you. Yeah, well, I hope everybody learned something today.
Yeah, this was a great demo. I loved watching this. I love your technique. And it's so, I think it really does kind of help you kind of be a little bit more expressive and put yourself out there a little bit more when you're playing with different things that you're not used to seeing. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and free yourself up. Use your left hand to draw if you don't want to use a brayer to do or just do those blind, start with your photograph and do a blind contour drawing from them. I'm going to show you one last thing real quick because I know you don't have time, but this is an exercise that I love. Matter of fact, I love this so much. I'm trying hard not to get it all dirty, but looked at Van Gogh's irises.
Oh yeah, that's nice.
Everybody can probably recognize the composition.
Yeah.
And I contour drew it 3 times, each with a different color. And it's a beautiful painting.
Yeah.
Or drawing.
That's really cool.
You know.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, so there's so much you can do. Of course, I studied from life, you know, I loved life drawing, and there's nothing better than studying from life, but a lot of people work from photographs now. And these are techniques to help you bust out of your painting looking like a photograph or getting caught into trying to get all the detail.
Yeah.
And get a more contemporary looking painting.
That is very cool. Anne, thank you so much for joining us today. This was an awesome demo. And everybody, if you want to learn more from Anne, she is actually going to be on faculty at our Pastel Live event coming up in September. I'm super excited about that. So be sure to check that out. That's coming up September 17th through 19th. So check that out. And then also we do have some pastel pointers that we send out. We have an ebook, 45 pastel pointers from the pros. And there's also some episodes of Art School Live and podcasts in there that are fun to listen to. So be sure to check that out. I want to thank Anne again so much for joining us today. Thank you all so much for watching. And we are going to see you tomorrow. We've got a special show tomorrow. It's going to be a little bit different than we normally do. So I'm excited to share that with you. So I will see you all tomorrow. Have a great day.